Greetings. Thank you all for joining us. We are extremely excited about today's webinar, Leading the Charge, the Role of Patients as Chief Advocates. We are live tweeting this event. Our Twitter handle is @EmryGenetics. If you have a Twitter account and are not following us, please do. The webinar hashtag is hashtag I'm Rare. And also, please feel free to follow the discussion on Twitter. Post your questions, comments, or thoughts using our webinar hashtag, again, hashtag I'm Rare. Also, at the very end of this webinar, we will have a Q&A portion designated. So feel free to enter your questions in the question feature during the webinar at any time. Again, we will respond during the designated Q&A. We have a very robust group of panelists with a plethora of information. Before we do get started, EGL would like to send a special thank you to all of our community partners. They were extremely instrumental in the success of our I Am Rare campaign, which launched February 1st and will conclude February 29th on Rare Disease Day. So thank you to the Batten Disease Support and Research Association. Thank you to the Achalasia Awareness Organization. Thank you to Eurydice, and thank you to Rare Genomics Institute. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists to you for today's webinar. Welcome Margie Frazier, Executive Director of the Batten Disease Support Research Association, Dr. Siva Raja, Thoracic Surgeon at Cleveland Clinic and Advisory Board Member on the Achalasia Awareness Organization, and Robert Platika, Online Community Manager of Eurydice. So Margie, I'm going to pass this over to you.
Thanks, Daniela.
Absolutely. Hold on one moment for me.
Okay. While Daniela's getting my slides ready, I wanted to thank EGL for all of their work in putting together this great month of education related to rare disease, and I'm sure that my co-panelists, who I'm happy to be presenting with, feel the same, that anytime that we can talk about patients and the patient voice in rare disease, it's a good thing. So thanks so much.
And Margie just says we're waiting to view your screen and now viewing. All right.
Okay. There we go. As Daniela said, I'm the director of the Batten Disease Support and Research Association. I'm talking to you today from snowy Columbus, Ohio, where our national headquarters are. We serve primarily North America and Canada, but we also serve many families around the world. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. But first off, what is Batten disease? It's one of approximately 50 diseases called lysosomal storage diseases, meaning that there are genetic mutations that disrupt the cell's ability to dispose of waste. In the case of children with Batten disease, it can affect them from infancy all the way to adulthood. Common problems in the disease occur with seizures, blindness, dementia, meaning that severe losses in cognition and changes in behavior will happen. There's a complete loss of motor skills with the lack of the ability to talk or walk and often communicate. And sadly, it results in it being very much a life-limiting disease. Fortunately, we're very happy because of patient advocates. We are looking at some very exciting clinical trial data now for several of the forms, and I'll talk about those in a minute. Batten disease is ultra rare, meaning that 20,000 or fewer cases are prevalent in the U.S. at any one time. So far, we know of 14 known mutations making up the family of Batten diseases. And Batten is also known as neuronal ceroid lipofuscinosis. And the forms of the disease are CLN1, CLN2, CLN3, etc., all the way to 13 and 14. And we anticipate, with companies like Emory and others coming out with large panels in our epilepsy panels, that we'll begin to see more diversity in the Batten family of diseases as tests become more robust. The BDSRA has been in existence for almost 30 years. Our families, as a point of advocacy, developed the organization in Washington State in 1987. And I talk to my staff and say, can you imagine what this was like for families in the 60s and 70s and 80s before there was any sort of social media, any sort of internet search? People were finding each other through doctor's offices and by telephone, and then began to gather in small groups across the country to find each other because, as you could imagine, this is a very isolating disease. And so over time, our organization has developed a variety of ways to support families that we believe and they believe is so vital. And as you can, these are real life families of ours who are very generous in letting us show the images so that we can show of families. So we help families connect. That is one of the most important things we do. We provide a safe and respectful platform on which they can talk with each other, share stories, reduce isolation, help each other in caring for their children and their siblings. We provide early consultation with physicians in our network of centers of excellence. We provide a yearly conference. This year it'll be in St. Louis in July. Typically we have about 450 people attending, and we have a special program for siblings, for grandparents. We have a research poster session. Researchers from all over the world come to talk with our parents. It's really a very exciting thing to see so many people come together. We're very engaged in social media with our group. We have a closed Facebook group that has approximately 800 people on it. Parents, grandparents, and caregivers can talk, and they do, almost 24/7 about what's happening in their families' lives and getting information, desperately needed education and information. We provide peer-to-peer mentoring opportunities, and as I said earlier, sibling support. Last year, we served families in 26 countries around the globe. Each year, we also direct a research merit review. Many of our families, as an act of advocacy, raise money every year to make sure that we are developing state-of-the-art research. So in an effort to get the very best research we can find across the globe, we have a merit review process. We have global funding partnerships with with foundations in the UK, in Europe, in New Zealand, in Australia, and the US and Canada. These families are key to research discovery, and research is key to hope for our families. And now I want to talk about the third leg of what we do in our organization, and that's advocacy and outreach. I want to spend just a little bit of time about why advocacy and why it's so important and why it's so important to our families. And I think several things. I think it's to tell stories for people who don't have a voice often. And I think it's no secret to anybody on the line today that people with disabilities often are left out of the conversation, and it's our job to help them have a voice. I think our families want to right a wrong somehow, that they see every day the isolation that their children have, and they want to right a wrong somehow. And so that comes out in a variety of different ways. A lot of people connected to our organization and into our movement are altruistic, and they have a sense that the world can be a better place for everybody, but primarily in our world for people with disabilities. For families who've lost a child to Batten, it's a way to give meaning to a great loss that they have. that this is a way that they can remember their child in ways that mean something to other people. And through that advocacy work, through going to meetings, through raising money, they're able to keep the memory of their child alive. And some people in our community are just invited to join and encouraged through awareness building. And it ignites something in them that they see firsthand what their neighbor's gone through, or one of our children has gone through, or a teacher teaches them at school and sees what they're going through, and they become ignited some way to make a difference and join in an advocacy momentum building opportunity. And then some people, once they feel the momentum, they join in. And so I think these are just some of the reasons that people become involved, because it's personal to them. I'd like to talk about an example of how something personal made a huge difference in the lives of people with disabilities in the U.S. For Jack Fisher, it was a curb. And I think when we walk through the cities and towns of our nation, we don't think much about a curb cut. But Jack Fisher thought a lot about it in Kalamazoo, Michigan. He's a World War II veteran and was rendered unable to walk by the war, and his city was one of the first to have curb cuts. And Jack, for him, it was personal. And Jack wanted other veterans and other people with disabilities to have curb cuts. So Jack set about making curb cuts. The History of Americans with Disabilities Act was greatly influenced by Jack Fisher and curb cuts. He believed all people in wheelchairs should be mobile and independent. To him, it was personal. And so what we know of curb cuts today eventually became what the ADA is. It started with people believing that people in wheelchairs should have more access to everything. And so now we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, and if I'm not mistaken, we celebrated 25 years of it last year. So it's made an enormous difference in the lives of so many people in the U.S. So what are some of the curbs? What are some of the barriers? What are some of the things that our families in the Batten world have latched onto in terms of things they wanted to make a difference in because it's personal? We've been at the front lines of the 21st Century Cures Initiative that aims to accelerate the pace of cures and medical breakthroughs in the U.S. Our parents are very vocal about Medicaid waivers, equipment, respite, in-home care, provider limitations, the price of drugs, their ability to fly on airplanes, their ability to get in and out of shopping centers. There are just a variety of things that our families have been working on because it's personal, and they brought many people along with them. The largest questions we have on a day-to-day basis in the office is related to school accommodations. Our organization spends a lot of time training teachers across the nation about Batten disease, about disability, about what our kids are capable of and what they need help with. Insurance coverage issues continue to be a very big deal for our families. Just getting a genetic test. I'm sure that people at EGL understand what I'm talking about, that it could take some time to get testing paid for by an insurance company. Issues related to treatment and symptom management can also be a very difficult problem related to insurance coverage. And so we spend a significant amount of time working with families, teaching them how to advocate for themselves related to insurance coverage issues. And we keep track of those, and we use them. We use that data to help us better advocate for families as a whole. We participate in legislative coalitions. And for those listening today, I'm hoping that you'll also look at rare disease legislative advocates and the National Organization for Rare Diseases here in the U.S. to see what they're working on in terms of rare disease, and lend your voice when you get an opportunity. We educate about rare disease policy, process, and engagement. We advocate for change within the medical, diagnostic, education, and coverage systems, and it's multi-channel. We're doing webinars. We're speaking to our families at conference. We talk to our legislators. We make sure that we're at the forefront as much as we can be in these conversations. And so for those on the call today, I hope you're asking, what can I do? What is personal to you about rare disease? Talk with others about what's personal to you in rare disease. Learn about content and process. And what I mean by that is, what are the issues? And then what is the process by which we make change? What are the levers? What are the organizations? Who are the people who need to be influenced in that process to be able to make a change about what's personal to you, about a wrong that you see that needs to be righted? Understand how your elected representatives in all sectors do or don't support advancement in rare disease research and disability services. I can't stress this enough. I think we're in a large election year. I think we ought to be asking these questions of our elected representatives. How do you support advancement in rare disease research and disability services, or don't? And I think that's a fair question to ask, because at any one time in the history of our lives, we are all going to be disabled at some point. And I think that's another way we make this personal. Opportunities will come your way to be a voice for those who can't speak for themselves. I was really delighted to spend just a little bit of time about my perspective as a rare disease group leader, to talk with you about how our families view advocacy and the importance of speaking up and making a difference and telling their stories. And this is a group of our siblings saying thank you. I hope that you feel free to contact me at any point if there are any questions that I can answer, or you'd like to learn more about our group and the work we do. So thanks so much. We'll turn it back to you, Daniela.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Margie. We really, really appreciated that. Again, this will contain, a Q&A section at the very end. So please feel free at any time during the duration of this webinar to go ahead and enter those questions in, and we'll get to those at the very end. Next, I want to introduce Dr. Siva Raja, thoracic surgeon at Cleveland Clinic and advisory board member of the Achalasia Awareness Organization. I'm going to go ahead and change the presenters over for you.
Okay.
All right, wonderful.
I'd like to thank you guys for having me on the program with both Emory Genetics as well as the Achalasia Awareness Organization for the opportunity to talk about another rare disease, which is achalasia. It's a rare disease in that it affects about 1 in 100,000 people, but it spares no one in terms of age, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic class. And we've treated people as young as 8 or 9 years old, all the way up to people in their late 80s. And it is a rare disease that is a lifestyle-limiting problem, where it is an autoimmune problem with the esophagus or the food pipe, and the function of the esophagus deteriorates over time. The real problem in identifying this problem in patients is that it mimics the symptoms of a more common problem, which is reflux. There are millions of Americans who have reflux, and some of the symptoms that initially present for people with achalasia are very similar. That they have regurgitation, they have reflux, they have the sense of heartburn, and this is a rare disease that can mimic that. And as a result, the most common diagnosis that is made is actually a misdiagnosis for people with achalasia. However, the achalasia as an entity has been known about for over 100 years. In fact, the very first operation to fix the underlying problem has been around for well over 100 years. And while it started with a very big operation back in 1913, in 2016, we're able to do it very easily, minimally invasively, with pretty small disturbance to the patient's lives. So in terms of achalasia itself, I think that I'm going to briefly talk about what it is and what it is that we do and what it is that we can do. And then I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about the title of this webinar, which is the role of patients as chief advocates, because I agree with the first speaker in that the way we make change going forward is actually by people educating other people, especially in things that are very rare. So achalasia is an autoimmune disorder that affects the motility or the function of the esophagus. And at the end of the day, what it does for them is that the esophagus loses its contraction, and also the valve at the bottom of the esophagus, called the lower esophageal sphincter, fails to relax. So functionally what that means for the patient is that they eat the food sits in the esophagus and doesn't make it to the stomach. And it can sometimes sit there for days, maybe a week. Something eventually does get through, but it causes a lot of difficulty in terms of eating. People lose weight. It can, at some extended level, be a life-threatening problem, but it is a severely lifestyle-limiting problem for a lot of folks. Fortunately, there are a variety of treatments out there that all the way from a simple dilation that people sometimes can get, which will buy them some time until they can get to a physician who understands the disease process more, to more definitive surgical therapies like we offer at Cleveland Clinic and other major institutions across the country. I think that the key to identifying this is making the diagnosis, and I think that having a very multidisciplinary group, gastroenterologists, surgeons, and also having family doctors be aware that this is an entity that's out there will help get more patients to the right treatment faster and at a point before the changes happen to the esophagus that we can't always reverse. Okay? So what are the treatments for achalasia that we have? Well, the treatments for achalasia have to do with the underlying problem, which is the valve doesn't open. In nature, the valve opens and it closes. It opens to let the food in, and it closes so that the food doesn't regurgitate back up. In achalasia, the problem is that the valve stays closed for the most part. And the surgical treatments are usually essentially centered around the fact that we may be able to cut the muscle, paralyze the muscle with Botox, stretch the muscle and break the muscle. Any of those therapies are designed to make the valve incompetent so that it stays open, and by gravity or by some pressurization, the esophagus will drain and people can get the food down and go on from there. The treatment is very straightforward when people get to a center that can treat somebody quickly. But what we see is people get misdiagnosed for years, and eventually what happens is that they put their symptoms in on the web, they talk to their friends, they go on Facebook, they go to websites such as those from the Achalasia Awareness Organization, and then they find that I find half my patients diagnose themselves, go to the doctor to confirm the diagnosis, and then come towards me. So once we've identified the problem, it's easy to treat the patients after a thorough workup to make sure it is not something that is mimicking achalasia. Just like others, like reflux disease that mimics achalasia, we find that achalasia can be has another entity which is called pseudoachalasia, which is there are other causes like cancer or scarring from acid reflux disease that can mimic achalasia. So it's important to identify what the problem is so that the treatment can be achieved. And in terms of the patients as advocates, I think that because people who initially get it don't really realize they have it, I think the advocacy in many ways should come from patients who have it. I think that having web chats, having people talking about their experiences, and how they underwent their diagnosis and how they're doing afterwards is a very important part in treating a disease that is more of a lifestyle limiting problem. And so people understanding that their lifestyle can be okay afterwards is a very important part. Now, it's not to say that people can't have life-threatening consequences from achalasia. If it goes undiagnosed and it gets to what we call end-stage achalasia, where the esophagus becomes very dilated, holds a lot of food, and some of that gets into the lungs, it can cause really bad pneumonias, and people can die from it. So while it is, for the most part, a disease that has a lot of lifestyle consequences, it can also have life-threatening consequences. So I think that in terms of identifying it, I think people are making it more aware. I think advocacy, both from the patient side, I think from a physician side as well, talking to our lawmakers in DC that allow us to do more research about these things. We identify the problems and we can treat the problems. We still don't know a lot about achalasia in that we don't understand what precipitates it, how to stop it, are there medical therapies? You know, I think the coming years are going to be pretty exciting in being able to try to figure that out. I think I'll save the rest of things for the questions that may arise. And once again, thank you for the opportunity to talk about achalasia and some of the work that we do at the Cleveland Clinic and their swallowing center to identify and treat people with achalasia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Raja. Next, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Robert Platika, the online community manager over at Eurydice.
Hi, Daniela. Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for having me. I'm just going to start sharing my screen now.
Okay, great.
I'm joining you tonight from Barcelona, where Eurydice has one of their three main European offices. I'm the online community manager at Eurydice, and I'm really happy to take part in this webinar as the 9th edition of Rare Disease Day fast approaches. Thanks to Margie and Dr. Raja for some very interesting presentations about those two rare diseases to start off with. Now I'd like to just briefly introduce Eurydice, talk about Rare Disease Day globally, and then talk about one of Eurydice's patient-driven projects that I work on at rareconnect.org. So Eurydice is an international, nonprofit, NGO, umbrella organization. We now have about 700 members across 69 countries. And are representing an estimated 30 million individuals living with rare diseases. Our mission is to build a strong European community, but also international community of patient advocacy organizations, as well as people living with rare diseases, and to try to be their voice at the European level, whether that's in Brussels with the European Commission or in London at the European Medicines Agency. Really, that's to try to fight and reduce the impact that the symptoms of these rare diseases have on people's lives. So I want to move on to Rare Disease Day now. Like I said, this is the 9th edition. It was created by Eurydice in 2008 with our Council of National Alliances. And we continue to coordinate the international campaign with the website rarediseaseday.org and provide communication tools like videos, posters, logos to organizations to use as part of the Rare Disease Day campaign. Our objective with Rare Disease Day is to raise awareness amongst the public and decision makers about the impact that rare diseases have on people's lives. And I think this webinar is, another great way to do that and to talk about these issues. It started as a European event and progressively became a worldwide event in 2009 with NORD in the US participating. Here's this year's poster with a young lady with spinal muscular atrophy from the Ukraine playing the piano. The Rare Disease Day video is already in 33 languages, and I'll share my slides at the end of this presentation, and all the links to download the poster and to watch the video are here within this presentation. The logos got an updated look this year. It's a bit more modern and has changed as Rare Disease Day continues to grow every year. And you can see a link there to get the logos for your website or your blog or your posters or your Rare Disease Day events there. We encourage people to use those and spread those. If you're looking for a way to get involved in Rare Disease Day and you're not really sure how, one of the easiest things you can do is to support the campaign on social media. So there's a Thunderclap social media campaign this year where already 1,000 people have signed up to send out the same message at the same time on the 29th of February, linking to the Rare Disease Day website. And there you can see you can support it with your Facebook account, your Twitter account, or Tumblr, or all three even if you'd like. And already the social reach, so the followers of all the people that have supported the social media campaign, is going to be over 1 million people. And there's still a few more days until that message gets sent out in unison on the 29th. So we're expecting, and already on the Rare Disease Day website, you can see hundreds of patient organizations as well as individuals holding thousands of events now all around the world. So I think we've really reached a great tipping point where millions of people are, seeing the video or getting a pamphlet in the mall or getting a lesson in their school or in their medical school about rare diseases around this time of year. And so I think hopefully that effect is being felt by families in the form of more recognition of what a rare disease is. It's global. It's growing every year. And so far from the Rare Disease Day website, we can count over 80 countries participating. There's just a screenshot of the rarediseaseday.org website. And it's where you can find events happening internationally. If you're in the U.S., I would also, of course, recommend you go to rarediseaseday.us, which is run by NORD, the National Organization for Rare Diseases. There, with the 50 states, you'll see state by state things happening there. Here, on the Rare Disease Day website, if you want to know what's happening in Japan or Uruguay or Canada, you could see some of the events there. Events are worldwide. There are 6 new countries and regions in 2016 that we're happy to welcome and now be in contact with for future editions of Rare Disease Day. So that's in Andorra, very close to us here in Barcelona, Indonesia, Libya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Tunisia. We're always excited when we can, see that Rare Disease Day is reaching outside of Europe, outside of the United States, and into Africa, Asia, South America, countries where we might not always have so much contact with people. I wanted to just share a few seconds of this really great video from Colombia. Oops. Okay, hopefully you could all see that. That's just a really great example of people in Bogota, using the Rare Disease Day logo, inviting what seems like, a really representative group of, people living with rare diseases in Colombia to come together in Bogota. Actually, they're having their event on the 28th of February. And what they're saying in this video, Juntos Somos Más, is together we are more, so together we are stronger. That's really the theme of Rare Disease Day. Some other events happening around the world. was in Brussels yesterday. I actually just arrived from Brussels last night, where yesterday during Eurodis's Rare Disease Day Symposium, the EU Health Commissioner came and gave a very interesting talk about rare disease registries, incentives for rare disease research, and really what the European Commission is trying to do to support access to the treatments for rare disease patients in Europe. So that was really interesting to see great political support from that level. In Egypt, you have events going on by the National Association for Rare Diseases. So we love, being able to communicate with these partners around Rare Disease Day and seeing the international movement really keep building. Finally, then here's just a poster for an event happening in Kenya at the Children's Hospital there. So people are gathering all around the world in these weeks for Rare Disease Day. So next I wanted to move into Rare Connect. So I think Rare Connect has kind of broken down borders and brought together people affected by rare diseases, kind of just like Rare Disease Day has. So Rare Connect are online communities and discussion groups for different rare diseases that are hosted by Eurodis, but really driven by patient organizations, volunteer moderators, who are people living with a rare disease or their loved ones, and others. There's the homepage of rareconnect.org. It's a platform for rare disease patients to develop online communities and conversations across continents and languages. The goal is really to provide a safe, accurate, and lively online platform that helps meet the needs of patients and people living with a rare disease. In that, it allows them to meet others, sometimes even across the language barrier, access quality information guaranteed by our moderators, our full-time moderating team at Eurodis, as well as the volunteers that join us from the patient groups, and allow people to actively participate in community-driven knowledge generation, which can complement and enhance, hopefully, research into rare diseases. Margie's slide on advocacy really rang true for me in that, Rare Connect is kind of doing some similar things to help tell stories for the voiceless, to help right a wrong, and to help have a platform where people can educate people. So what does that mean practically? Rare Connect is in 6 languages: English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese. It's been going on since 2010. There are now over 20,000 members from around the world. There are 84 rare disease-specific online communities. And now, since last September, we launched the discussion groups, which I'll show you in a minute. And hundreds of discussions are popping up on cross-cutting rare disease issues like gene therapy, and also very rare diseases where maybe there are no patient associations and people are having trouble to find others living with the disease. What's unique in Rare Connect is that we use human translation, and in 2014, over 1 million words were translated by humans to help facilitate those connections. We have a network of 270 volunteer moderators that I really work with on a daily basis to check the accuracy of the posts and the stories that are shared on the communities and in the discussion groups on Rare Connect. And in total, we have 685 global patient association partners. The vision of Rare Connect is really to make it the reference global platform to the rare disease community, similar as maybe Orphanet or the Nord Rare Disease database is a reference point, and really have it be a multilingual platform to reach out, not only in Europe but also all over the world. I mentioned we're in 6 languages, and we'll be adding Russian language and Serbian Croatian language this year as well. Here's the topic groups homepage. Like I said, people sometimes when they can't find a patient group are kind of planting a flag and sharing a blog, a story, or just a question. Hey, anyone else have this very rare case? I'm having trouble finding a patient group. Or anyone else being asked to participate in a clinical trial. What did you do to help prepare for that? Here's an example of just a connection that was made for a very rare disease called lysosomal acid lipase deficiency. The Spanish Patient Association that just knew about 26 cases or people in Spain posted there on the discussion groups. And then actually a Cuban family living in Italy was able to connect to the Spanish Association and to this other parent and get to start to exchange about what kinds of experiences they were having. So those are our discussion groups. Our communities, like I said, we have 84 disease-specific communities that you can find on Rare Connect. I'll just go through the AHUS community quickly. Atypical HUS is a rare autoimmune blood disorder where the mutation causes red blood cells to burst and cause kidney damage and eventual kidney failure. These partners and patient groups from around the world came together and asked us to create this community on Rare Connect. So we worked with all of them to include information from their websites and stories from their members to create the community. So here is what a community on Rare Connect looks like. Patient stories are featured prominently along with the links to those patient group partners so that if, for example, a newly diagnosed patient in Canada finds Rare Connect, while they're Googling their symptoms, they can be referred to probably the moderator in the patient group in Canada to, get maybe more precise information during that part of their rare disease journey. Here's an example of a story from India on the atypical HUS community, and this gentleman, Kamal, has actually now traveled after meeting people on Rare Connect to London to the last International Atypical HUS Conference. So kind of, what started as a digital connection grew to a real-world connection to meet these other patient groups and patient advocates. Patient groups are also promoting their awareness days and their shared projects on Rare Connect communities. They're promoting and sharing their videos from their YouTube channels with information from medical specialists when it's available. And really the forum and the stories are a place to talk about daily life of living with a rare disease. And like I mentioned, we have the human translation. This just shows where a logged-in member of a Rare Connect community can request a translation and understand what someone is saying across the other language. So once that human translation has been finished, you get an email, and then you can read that post now in your native language, for me, English, and understand someone's experience even if they're not living in your country. And for some of these diseases where it's so hard to find somebody who lives in your area or your country, or sometimes people are coming from very small countries, like Latvia, they're needing to use this human translation service to connect to big support groups in the UK or in the US or something like that. So as I wrap up here, I just wanted to kind of summarize what kinds of things people are talking about in Rare Connect communities, what patients' concerns are. It's really, kind of first and foremost, how can I get a diagnosis? We all know that on average it takes about 7 years for someone living with a rare disease to get the proper diagnosis. The other common question we see a lot is, where can I find a doctor that knows my disease? And a lot of the patient group partners that we have their own doctor. The patient group in their country to be connected, to hopefully a doctor in their area. so many people on Rare Connect, and I think this could be a common experience amongst rare diseases, were misdiagnosed and kind of misunderstood as having a psychiatric disorder when doctors couldn't identify the symptoms. And once the rare disease has finally been confirmed, and hopefully they're getting treated for that, there's some kind of resulting psychological impact that people are wanting to address and talk about with others. Genetic questions are coming up, and that's why we're happy to be partnering with Emory Genetics Lab to help to understand how to refer people who have those questions to the right resources online or to the right experts. People are talking about treatments, but of course they're not recommending treatments to other patients or families. They're just sharing their experience and what they've tried. Also most common, where can they find support, or where can they talk to someone in a similar situation as them. So thanks for letting me present this Rare Disease Day and our work, on that, and also, Rare Connect, a really patient-driven project that I'm proud to be working on now for going on 5.5 years. So please feel free to contact me after the webinar and follow some of our social media work there. So thanks, and now I'll be sticking around for questions if anyone has any questions. Daniela?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rob, for that. It was very, very informative. And we can definitely see that passion shining through in terms of the years of commitment. I believe you said 5 to 7. So great job there. Thank you, and continue doing what you're doing. We do want to go ahead and open it up for questions. We do have a few questions now, so I'll go ahead and start. And this is going to be for actually you, Rob. It says it appears that participation in growth of Rare Disease Day has grown exponentially since its inception. What is the overall hope and goal within the few coming years?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, it grew from just a few countries in 2008 to now over 80. We're not expecting many more countries to grow, though we were happy to see 6 more this year. The hope is that really through another Eurodis initiative called Rare Diseases International, we can have Rare Disease Day recognized by the World Health Organization, just as I think December 3rd is International Day of Disability, and World AIDS Day is also in November, December. We'd like Rare Disease Day to also have that recognition. So if you check out the RareDiseasesInternational.org website, you can read a bit more about that kind of ultimate goal that has already kind of started and will be worked on in the coming years. It's not very easy to work with the WHO, but we're getting together, all the rare disease organizations interested in helping us to lobby for that.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I have a question for you, Dr. Raja. This individual says, I believe achalasia develops in about 3,000 people in the U.S. each year. How many cases do you treat?
I think the number is about right. It's 1 in 100,000. So, but no, 2,500 to 3,000 is probably correct. We operate on probably anywhere from about 70 to 100 patients with achalasia, and that's mostly because we are a focused esophageal center of excellence, and we have a multidisciplinary team of gastroenterologists, surgeons, and we have an esophageal manometry lab. That all focuses on identifying and treating these people with this rare disease very effectively and very efficiently. So, which is there are cases in the United States based on whether you live on the East Coast or West Coast that have high enough volumes. But I would say that the bulk of it is being treated in hospitals near you. And I think in terms of overall outcome, there are people who do a good job everywhere. And I think it's identifying people who do enough of it near where you are that will make the difference in how you do. And the last thing I would tell you is that I think the common misconception about treating rare diseases is that once you get a treatment, it's not usually the end of it, in that you have to be followed lifelong, and because it's a disease that affects you lifelong. So you need to go be attached to an institution or a medical establishment that's going to be able to provide you with that care for the rest of your life, not just for that one moment in time to get you better for just that day or that month or that year.
Okay, wonderful.
Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And then, Margie, I'm going to direct this to you, and then Rob, if you want to jump in after her, please do. This attendee is asking, how can patients without a diagnosis effectively address systemic advocacy issues?
Well, I think patients without, two things. If you care about rare disease, whether you have it or not, there are a variety of ways that you can get involved, either through rare disease legislative advocates, URODIS, NORD. Everybody is always looking for people who want to be vocal about rare disease. You don't absolutely have to have it. I think everyone in the world knows somebody with a disability, so it wouldn't even have to be a rare disease. We're always interested in people who care about the issues we care about. I think I'm hearing that question correctly. If it's somebody who thinks they have a rare disease and they are not yet diagnosed but want to join in, I think the issues are similar, but I think not having a diagnosis and not belonging to a disease group is a personal issue that needs advocacy as well. I think we need to continue to have many, many more good tests to help people get their diagnosis so that they can belong. So whether I was reading too much into that question or not, I'm still going to say it.
No, that was great, Margie. And I just want to add that if that person is in the United States, the National Institute of Health does have the Undiagnosed Diseases Network.
That's right.
Yeah, which they could contact and see if there's a center nearby them that they could try to participate in. We also are launching a undiagnosed community on Rare Connect. So that person could also right now go to Rare Connect and then select undiagnosed diseases from the list of communities and share a story or a question there. And that's an initiative that once Rare Disease Day is over, we're going to really launch with our partners there. The other recommendation too is if they're undiagnosed and in the U.S., there's SWAN, Syndromes Without a Name, which is a patient group that they could get in contact with and work on advocacy and story sharing there as well. So those would be my other suggestions to add.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rob. Thank you so much, Margie. We do have another question that came in. It says, are there any resource apps in the works by any of these rare disease organizations? And perhaps there already is an app. Does anybody want to shoot for that? Rob, Margie, are there any
resource? I'm not sure what they mean by resource app. Like resource app for all rare diseases? Like rare disease encyclopedias, or
are we talking about an iPhone app, that kind of app, or?
So they didn't say. So Jen, if you want to go ahead and elaborate on that a little bit in the question feature, that'll be great. And once she responds, I'll get back to that question. But there is another question that's coming in. Oh, yes, she says phone app. Thank you, Jen. Phone app.
Phone app? Okay. Well, we don't have one, at least for achalasia, and I'm not aware of one, but it sounds like a good idea that we should probably create one. There are a lot of websites, and I think that many of the academic institutions have something along those lines for achalasia and other rare diseases. We have at the Cleveland Clinic have an extensive website on achalasia, the treatments of achalasia, as well as some of the current cutting-edge therapies, such as we call POEM or per oral endoscopic myotomy. We have a lot of resource for both patients and providers, and we've also put a lot of YouTube videos talking about this, as well as videos about procedures. So to answer your question, we haven't put it together in an app for an iPhone or an iPad or some kind of a mobile device, but it is available through our website, through the Cleveland Clinic website. And if you type in achalasia, or if you go to YouTube and type in achalasia and Cleveland Clinic, you should be able to get access to a lot of these presentations, as well as the printed material.
Okay, wonderful. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
I would just like to add to that too, that Orphanet, which is a rare disease encyclopedia in 7 or 8 languages. It's kind of the reference point here in Europe for rare diseases. Does have an app for iPhone and Android where you can read maybe 3,000 or 4,000 rare disease summaries and find links about those rare diseases. So if you kind of have a general interest in many different rare diseases, that could be a good phone app for you. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the Orphanet.
Okay, great. And we do have another question, and I think we want to go ahead and maybe end here. I do want to let everyone know that is an attendee that we are going to email this recording out tomorrow. So you will have access to this. You'll have access to everyone's email, contact information, and then also the plethora of resources that they've provided, because I'm sure everyone is extremely interested in a lot of the information that they've provided us today. The last question here. In your opinion, how important are advocacy groups and communities, and what value and benefit do they add to families who are going through what many consider the diagnostic odyssey? I know Rob and Margie, you all both mentioned righting wrongs.
I think the patient advocacy groups like ours and the many that Rob represents and the one that Dr. Raja is involved with are absolutely essential life-giving forces to these families. They tell us that every day. They believe that their family has been enriched by the experience of talking with others, learning new things about themselves they never knew, how best to serve the children in their family who aren't affected, the best way to find the right physician, the right medication, how to go on living after their children have gone. These are the big life questions that we help facilitate every single day. And so we believe it's absolutely essential that families have a safe and respectful platform on which to work that's facilitated for them, so that they can just do the very best they can.
Wonderful. Would anybody else like to add anything?
Yeah, definitely. I would just like to say that I think all of Eurydice's work is driven and decided by its membership and the rare disease patient groups that play such an important role in each and every country, to being kind of that beacon or that lighthouse that offers hope and information to people that were kind of maybe lost at sea before on the diagnostic odyssey. So that's kind of how I see rare disease patient groups. And then, within those rare disease patient groups, we can have communities and conversations that are safe and that allow people, through technology and phones and everything, to quickly be able to connect and find that understanding that is different from the understanding that they find at the doctor's office or amongst their other friends who might not have a child with such challenging symptoms. So yeah, that was a great question, and thanks for letting me comment.
Wonderful.
I'd like to echo the same sentiment in that, they say knowledge is power, but knowledge is also hope. And I would say that, as a physician who treats patients with achalasia, I can tell you how to treat it, how to take care of it, what are the complications, and how are you going to do the success rates, all that. But I can't tell you what it is to live as a patient with achalasia. And I think that's where the advocacy groups and the organizations that surround these individual disorders and diseases are very helpful in that provides people with hope that that life goes on beyond this, and that life is okay beyond this for certain diseases. And I think that it provides them with a community of other folks who also experienced it, so they know they're not alone. I couldn't see this happening 10, 15, 20 years ago, but with the advent of the technology that we have today, it's clearly been a blessing.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much to our three panelists. EGL truly appreciates your participation. Thank you, Margie Frazier, with the executive director of Batten Disease Support and Research Association. Thank you so much, Dr. Sipparaja, thoracic surgeon of Cleveland Clinic and advisory board member of Achalasia Awareness Organization. And thank you so much, Robert Putika, online community manager with Eurydice. Everyone, again, we will send these recordings out tomorrow via email, as well as send out a short survey just asking for your feedback as it relates to the information that was provided. And thank you so much for joining us. We truly hope that you enjoyed it, and we will be having a PECS webinar next month, March 24th. So everyone have a fantastic day, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I think I'm off. How do I mute this?